What goes on in the Octagon might just transform the way we treat brain injuries everywhere. Can the world of combat sports lead the way for safer, smarter, and more connected brain injury treatment? Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Mind Matters, Navigating Head Injuries and Concussions. Today, we continue our conversation with Chris Cannon of M2MMA. With a fresh look at athlete support, cutting-edge research, and community outreach, we're going to explore how innovations born on the mat could ripple out to broader brain injury prevention and care. Chris, it's good to have you back with us today.
Pleasure. Great to be back with you again.
Yes, sir. So let's get to it. Chris, so how can the individual, whether we're talking athletes, medical professionals, advocates, whomever, get involved in supporting M2MMA's mission?
Well, there's a few ways. The most simplest one, just follow us on social media. We're very active there, again, promoting our message and just promoting combat sports in general. We believe for the good of everyone involved, the more people that watch, participate, and eventually potentially compete, it's great for everyone involved. Number two, again, if you want to reach out to us directly and see how you can get involved as well, there's many different opportunities.
Have you seen any particular impact from community or professional involvement so far? Have there been any specific volunteer or partnership opportunities that have led to real changes in this athlete well-being or brain injury prevention from your perspective?
Yeah, I think one of the opportunities there, again, as I mentioned on our previous episode, is that there are other technologies existing in this space right now who are doing a good job, who we're looking to work with, who can provide immediate support to our athletes. Mm-hmm. And it's also, again, how can we, over time, also work with researchers? How can we work with other, even people like yourselves? How can we help support what you're doing in this mission to support people with traumatic brain injuries who have suffered? And ultimately, can we help prevent it over time in various different avenues? Yeah. I think that's where, again, the data we're collecting, the technologies we're developing can provide a lot of benefits to a lot of people.
Yeah, and I think, I appreciate that. And I think, what can you do to help us? I think you're doing it right now, man. You're bringing awareness, education. You've mentioned in the last episode, we're going to talk about it more here. So, appreciate that. I know that you just mentioned it. You work on collecting and analyzing fight data to improve safety. How is this information then shared with your athletes, the coaches, or even healthcare providers?
Yeah, so that's something we're busy developing as we speak. And again, the way to, this is where the AI comes, as I mentioned in our previous episode. We need to collect a large amount of data points to be able to properly correlate it, to actually package that and deliver it to our athletes, their coaches, medical professionals, and whoever else we work with. One of the things I've come across, again, speaking with people in this space, is one piece of data, yes, it can be useful, but it's actually the package that's correlated together to actually start to understand this issue. If you're going to make decisions over athletes' training, and as we've seen, in rugby currently, they're a good example, right? They brought in the mouth guard pings up at a certain G-force, immediate on-field check, and an HIA check at half-time. If they get hit again over a certain thing, they get pulled out of the game. That is a protocol that has been delivered. However, one of the issues they have come across is that every athlete's different, right? So how a certain G-force affects you may affect me differently. Even I spoke to a researcher who talked about neck strength when they were working with these mouth guards, that makes a big difference as well. So again, for us, we don't actually want to jump the gun and start to, let's say, the technology side of things and throw in protocols on one piece of data. We need the whole package. And that's why, again, it's not, working with other people and develop things over time is important, because you have to actually properly understand this, especially if you're making decisions that are going to change athletes' careers as well. And it might be a real-time fight decision, informing athletes properly through our training camp. But again, there are, initial ways we can, I mentioned Neurocatch earlier as well, who are doing a good job. You can monitor an athlete's cognitive performance. You can kind of show them that, if after sparring, potentially your performance is dipping a little bit, your reaction time might be dropping, that maybe you should adjust that. But again, that's still something that needs to be extensively researched over time. This is not something you can just jump in and switch one day. That's why, again, it is important for us to work with various different people. I spoke to the guy, Thane Vance over there, who's head of sports science at Kansas University. He's done some great work researching this as well. There's lots of people who we want to work with. I just think there's so much opportunity here. Obviously, I'm an athlete at heart, and I love getting into the weeds, so to speak, of performance. So, and these two things are correlated. We recently have started doing a little bit of work with a company called Brain Dubai, which is an incredible performance center over in the UAE. And again, the level of baseline testing they do with athletes to really understand exactly where they are in every aspect of their cognitive performance is incredible. And it's something I wish I had access to. But again, how can we work with them to properly understand where Chris or Kylie is at in their cognitive space? How is that changing over a training camp? And then where can we start to then, like using our other data points, start to again provide better protocols and better training protocols?
Yeah, that's amazing. I just feel so much. You guys are obviously on the cutting edge here. You know, AI. You know, the explosion of tech, wearable tech, etc. And you know, in tandem with athletics or even the military, is just now starting to hit its stride. I think so. These advances I feel like are going to come hard and heavy. And so staying up to date is going to be key and difficult to be honest. One thing you hear a lot about are data privacy concerns. Have you guys run into anything yet as far as data management, data privacy or accuracy, and how does your organization address these issues that you ensure you trust the protocol?
Yeah, I mean it is a very important thing to be aware of. Again, like we obviously have the benefit when we work with athletes. Obviously athletes under contract, and as I said, this is an important part. It's the priority of our organization, and every athlete that comes into the M2MMA organization understands they are part of this larger picture. They're actually playing a massive role. The data we collect from them is part of addressing this issue. And again, this is where we see it's creating such a nice loop for us here, where actually people who step into our network are actually benefiting from as well. So they are incentivized to take part and participate, because the work we do in research and developing improved technologies and learning how AI can address this issue and start to correlate these data points, it's going to benefit everyone. So again, like we are fortunate in that space where again, like the data side of things, people want to be a part of what we're doing. And again, it's even for people like yourselves, I'm also interested, where we see that other potential applications over time is data collected from athletes taking. How can that be? Car crash victims and people who suffer injuries in daily life. Starting to understand this issue of what's actually happening to a brain in real time when they receive a traumatic brain injury can be so beneficial to so many people.
Absolutely, yeah. When you're talking about, say, the biomechanics of a head-on collision and a full-on force punch to the face, you've got some similar biomechanical characteristics there. So I 100% see the crossover in how the tech and the data you guys are developing and covering can impact car crash victims on our end of things. So much appreciate that for sure. I would like to pose to our audience for a sec. I know we've got athletes in the audience, at all levels, perhaps, again, brain injury patients that are in recovery, or someone you love is recovering from one. Is there any new tech or new data that has changed the way you move through your training or your recovery? I'd love for you to share that with us in our comments, please. Chris, what partnerships or new collaborations has M2MMA pursued, in that research or athlete care recently? Are there opportunities for you've mentioned medical professionals coming alongside and doing their own work, but to participate directly with you?
Yes, we are. Look, there's some discussions I simply can't obviously announce publicly, sure. But again, we are actively involved in this space of looking for people to work with us in this area. Again, I know there's some universities have got some very interesting work they're doing in terms of concussion technology. Some of this stuff is available. We see Columbia University and Dr. Thomas Bottiglieri and his team are working on some very interesting technology in terms of concussion technology, detection technology. Again, I mentioned Thane Vance earlier, who's done some research in terms of cognitive performance, how that changes during before and after a fight. But again, we're looking for people to work with. Again, this is not something we can just snap our fingers and address ourselves. We are very active in working with federations, specifically the UAE. We've spoken to them extensively. How can we work with the federations there to help support their athletes, and also for ourselves? You can see again what I mentioned earlier, it's a compounding loop here, that if we go in and work with a federation and support the athletes, collect data, develop our technologies, it actually helps their athletes in terms of protects them, We figure out how we can improve their performance. They perform better on a global stage, which again also promotes what we do. So the same thing with, when we're talking to researchers and other partnership technologies, like I mentioned, NeuroCatch and Valight and other people we've spoken to. Again, we are very active in being out there, and even with yourselves. Again, I really appreciate you guys contacting us again, like from a legal side of things, like, because this is also a big part of this equation as well. Is that I just don't think athletes over time have been protected enough or looked after. And again, some of them aren't aware of, like, actually, especially when you go down the levels, it's really actually quite frightening, some of the things we've seen. And over time, we want to really set the standard that actually this stuff won't be allowed. Like, it will be mandated that our protocols that we've developed will be the standard across sports where athletes are better protected. So again, like, you mentioned, say, partnerships. Again, and if you want to contact, again, people watch this video, see this cool, please contact us. We'd love to talk to anyone who's passionate about what we're doing and how we can work with them to, accelerate our progress.
Absolutely. I love the outreach factor there, because you've mentioned it in this episode and in the previous episode about how, partnerships, community, really, it's the only way to, again, turn this aircraft carrier behemoth, if you will, effectively. So appreciate the outreach there. Have you seen already, and how long has M2MMA been up and running? I don't think I asked in the beginning.
So we're literally coming on 2 years now.
2 years, so fairly new still. So
again, like, especially in the grand scheme of things, I said this is the aircraft carrier is a great analogy. It's not a quick turnaround.
Yeah, amen to that. But it sounds like you've done some amazing work and take some huge strides already in just a short time frame. Have you already seen any of M2MMA's that data-driven approach? Some of your protective protocols. Have you seen them inspire any changes outside of the MMA world, or do you foresee partnerships? I know you've talked about collaborations. Do you foresee partnerships with other sports leagues with regard to the brain health or injury prevention that you guys are working on specifically?
Definitely. I think,
Great.
Mark has said, like, first, number one, I'm a sports fan. I've watched all the sports throughout my life, and I just think sports are such a vehicle for so much positivity for so many people. And if it was up to me, everyone in this world would be, doing some kind of sports. And I just think there's so much opportunity. If you actually look at the landscape of sports, and you've talked about even outside of sports as well, the military is a great, and again, a lot of these technology companies involved in this space have been funded by the DoD because, again, it makes sense, right, to protect our armed forces. But again, how we can develop technologies and collect data and understanding these issues can have huge application across all of contact sports. You obviously, with NFL is the major one over here in the States, but NHL, motor racing, soccer is, let's say, from the CTE standpoint, is a real culprit that people are starting to understand. Again, at Columbia University, their MRI research center there is off the top of my head, I can't remember the chap's name, but does some great research recently around MRI actually starting to detect CTE. And obviously, one of the issues with CTE previously is that it's only been something you can find out once you actually cut open someone's head, sadly, once they're deceased. Yeah. So soccer's another big area, and it might be downhill sports, mountain biking, skiing, all these kind of things. We hope, with one day that we can apply our technologies and the things we've learned, the protocols, to these other sports to protect athletes across sports, and even outside of sports, where, again, people like yourselves can, properly assess what's happened to an injury in a car crash, or, falling over the street, or, in the military. So again, traumatic brain injury, as you know, I think it's great to meet people like yourselves that are talking about it. And, your website is great, and seeing you've even got the concussion checklist there as well. And but a lot of people are affected by it, but it's not something that's really talked about. We talk about, a lot of other diseases, and rightly so. But millions of people every year are affected negatively by traumatic brain injury. And some people don't even realize they've been affected, which is even more scary. So again, the work we're doing, that not just from can we help support those people over time, but also from an education factor. Even a podcast like this, maybe one or two more people might hear the information. It might cause them to think twice about going about to go play soccer or rugby on the weekend when actually they're feeling a little fuzzy, they've been feeling a bit nauseous, these kind of things. That impact alone is worth it.
100%. Yeah, I know, internally, here at Shane Smith Law, we've got attorneys who are specialists with brain injury cases. They brought me along a couple of years ago, integrating a registered nurse who has, brain injury treatment experience. It's the landscape is a changing, we'll say. And so, 100% love the shout out, because you're right. It takes a village. That's why we have this podcast, to bring that awareness, to have on, guests who are going to champion and be that loud voice for us, that have that stage to kind of shout it from the rooftops, if you will, and bring attention where it's needed, because people don't know. That's why we have that checklist on our website, because to understand what brain injury or concussion looks like, most people just sweep those symptoms, if we will, under the rug as they're having a bad day, a slow start. It's very easy to do, but there's so much more. It's a very insidious, silent,
you know what, like every now and again when I have a little bit of a brain fog moment or something doesn't come to my brain, I think, was that from heading too many footballs when I was younger?
Yeah.
Now
you got to think about it.
I came into this with a huge passion for combat sports, a huge passion for supporting athletes, but this was not a topic I really had much experience in. But again, obviously I've delved deeply into it over the last couple of years, and it's only increased my passion for this. Has to be addressed. And again, we all need to educate, and we all need to, rally the troops, so to speak, because so many people need to be helped here that, again, it requires, you say, that kind of team mentality to address it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's the one thing. One thing data does is, once it's out there, it's like the spotlight's on, and now I think, coaches, teams, providers, legal we're obligated to now do something about it. We know the truth. Now what? That's the question, and appreciate seeing you guys actually taking action.
That's another. When you talk about these sports organisations, they are obligated, because again, some of the scary thing is, as we know, is that some of this information has been around a while now, and yet people are still not doing what they could be doing to protect their athletes. Yes. And that's where we also believe the message was, why it's so important to get that out there. So the athletes are aware, because some of them, again, and I get it, because this is your life, this is your career, this is when you worked hard for day in, day out, especially when you go to these combat sports gyms where they are literally fighting week to week to make it financially. Yeah. That they're not aware of actually the protection they should be being afforded. And because of the structures I mentioned on the previous episode, systemically, that we need to incentivize people to change, or if not, we need to force them to change. It's one or the other, but things have to change. So again, this is a mission that we appreciate support for us.
Absolutely. I think, and again, I hate it. I could have this conversation for another hour, I feel like, but we're running up against time. So I would love for you, Chris, to kind of talk about lifelong support for the fighters at M2 MMA, but how might that inspire similar models for brain injury survivors everywhere?
Yeah, I think, as we mentioned a number of times here, education is important, right? Yeah. That if people can learn what a traumatic brain injury is, what are the symptoms over a long period of time, and also how can we learn to mitigate those symptoms, treat them. And again, this is where we talk about working with partners. How can we, over time, work with people to provide solutions for the issues involved to support survivors of traumatic brain injury? And just rallying around the people around those individuals to help support them as well, because again, that awareness is so key, because you might not know your friend, your family member is suffering from these symptoms, but if you're now aware from the education we provided, and again, that's where again also our actual promotion provides us the platform to, let's say, enhance our message, that they now be able to, for their friend or family member, get checked out and over a period of time seek support. From a platform point of view, again, I want to provide athletes with holistic support, okay? And holistic is not just strength and conditioning, physical training, but it's also psychological, cognitive training, nutrition, mental health, and even financial health. Again, another issue within this realm, so to speak, is money. That people don't have the money to go get checked out by a doctor all the time. And especially obviously in the United States and other countries, and athletes who are traveling may not have insurance. It's another big problem. that we want to be able to provide even financial education that enables an athlete to seek support when they need it. We create this holistic space that also feeds back into us as well, that we believe if you help develop an athlete, support an athlete holistically, they are going to better provide for you back to our organization and also their community around them. If you educate an athlete, they're going to educate their friend. If you're going to help finance an athlete properly and teach them how to learn and grow their money, they're going to support their community better. They're going to, so again, you see, it's like we really believe it's a self-compounding cycle where if you do support and protect athletes, everyone's going to benefit from it.
Yeah. Agree. Yeah, and I think that's completely applicable to, brain injury survivors in general. When we're talking about the community they have around themselves, whether it's family, friends, it's their medical team, the therapists. I mean, the more that community can sow into that patient, the better off that patient and then their circle is going to be down the road. So I completely see the correlation there.
Yeah,
Chris. Amazing.
And again, as we know, if anyone's seeking support around you, and I get it, a lot of us, especially when you are struggling psychologically, and again, potentially from some of the symptoms of traumatic brain injury, it's very easy to shut yourself away. Create that support network around you. That is so vital for so many people in so many different areas. And again, even having a legal team like yourselves who back you personally and want to be there for you is going to be a vital part of how you look after yourself over time.
100%. Yeah, where our clients are concerned, it's not just about treating those bodily injuries or the brain. With the brain injury come all the things you've been talking about: emotional damage, mental, struggles, if you will.
Depression's a big effect of
huge
CBI, and it's not talked about. A lot of people don't realize it.
Yes. Yeah, 100%. And isolation is a killer. No doubt about it. You cannot isolate. So thank you for ringing that bell for sure. Audience, I'd love to ask you, especially for the legal and healthcare professionals that are out there listening right now, what are the biggest challenges when it comes to proving injury or advocating for care in your realm? And how can sports innovation like M2MMA help where you're concerned? Chris, I really appreciate your time. I know we're up against it. I'd like to just throw it to you. Is there anything you'd like to leave our audience with as it comes to, M2MMA, the work you're doing, anything at all? I'll give you the mic.
Well, literally just following on from what you said there, if you are interested in what you do or what we're doing, if you want to play a part, please reach out to us directly and get involved. Again, we believe this is a community issue where the more people that are rally around us and people like yourselves, the quicker we can accelerate our progress. That, again, we want passionate people supporting us that are in it for the long term to really properly address this issue and play a part in protecting athletes and beyond. As I said, what we're working on here has application across, on a global scale, for the person who suffered from a car crash to someone who fell over in the street slipping on ice or playing rugby or skiing or whatever it might be, or your brother or sister in the military. We want to be able to support them. So if you are passionate about this, please contact us and rally round. And at the very least, please follow us on social media at M2MMA Official.
There you go. And audience, that info will be in the show below, so please do that. Chris, really appreciate it. And with that, audience, we're at time for this episode. We here at Shane Smith Law want to thank Chris Cannon and M2MMA for joining us on the show today. Before we sign off, I'd like to challenge you as the audience to think about this. Changing the landscape for brain injury prevention takes all of us. You've heard it here. That's what we've been talking about. From athletes, families, clinicians, even legal advocates. So to join this conversation, share your own hard-fought wisdom, on brain injury and recovery. Leave your thoughts below. It really helps others in our community as well as helps us to create new and exciting content. Until next time, stay informed, stay fired up, and keep advocating for better brain health for everyone. And as always, remember, if you're in pain, call Shane at 980-999-9999. We'll see you next time.
In pain, so I call Shane. 980-999-9999. In pain, call Shane.